2 years ago, Mason Holloway, a 38-year-old software engineer specializing in cybersecurity, made a life-altering decision to leave the chaos of Seattle behind. After 8 years in the military and 5 more in the claustrophobic tech offices of the city, I craved tranquility and space. Green Valley Estates, a picturesque suburban neighborhood nestled against the woodlands of western Washington, seemed like the perfect sanctuary. The community boasted modern homes on spacious lots, surrounded by miles of pristine forest, a haven that promised peace without the isolation of rural life. The steep $450 quarterly HOA fees raised an eyebrow, but the real estate agent assured me they were justified by the meticulously maintained community, spaces, and award-winning landscaping. It sounded like a fair trade for the serenity I sought. I settled into my new home, a 2-story craftsman-style house on Maple Street, with high hopes. My job allowed me to work remotely, giving me the flexibility to enjoy the quiet mornings and the rustling of leaves in the nearby woods. Green Valley Estates was everything I'd hoped for on the surface: manicured lawns, friendly waves from neighbors, and the promise of a tight-knit community. But beneath the polished exterior, I would soon discover a web of control and deceit that would turn my quiet retreat into a battleground, the shadow of the HOA. My first hint of trouble came in the form of Evelyn Richardson, the 38-year-old president of the Green Valley Estates Association. Evelyn was a senior manager at a prestigious law firm, with a perfectly styled bob haircut and an air of authority that seemed to permeate every interaction. She arrived at my doorstep during my second week in the neighborhood, clutching a welcome basket that was less about warmth and more about control. Tucked among the gourmet cookies and a bottle of cheap wine were pages of HOA bylaws, thicker than any community handbook I'd ever seen. "We're so delighted to have new blood in Green Valley," she said, her smile tight and rehearsed, never quite reaching her eyes. "I'm sure you'll love our community once you understand how we operate." That should have been my first red flag. Evelyn had been the unchallenged HOA president for 5 years, her elections unopposed because, as I'd later learned, no one dared to run against her. She ruled with the support of her loyal board. Marcus Bennett, a 42-year-old local government employee who served as vice president and functioned as Evelyn's yes man, and Richard Cooper, a 55-year-old accountant who acted as treasurer, often looking uncomfortable but rarely dissenting. I decided to keep my head down. I paid my dues on time, mowed my lawn to the exact height specified in the bylaws, and avoided the monthly HOA meetings, which my neighbor, Sarah Johnson, described as Evelyn's personal court sessions. Sarah, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher who lived 2 doors down, was one of the few genuine souls in Green Valley. She'd drop by with homemade cookies and a warm smile, offering snippets of neighborhood wisdom. "Don't let Evelyn get to you," she advised early on, her voice low as if Evelyn might overhear us from across the street. "She means well sometimes. She just believes her way is the only way." I nodded, grateful for the warning, but determined to stay out of trouble. I wasn't here to make waves. I just wanted peace. But peace, as I'd soon discover, was not part of Evelyn's vision for Green Valley. The hunting incident. Growing up in rural Montana, I'd learned to hunt from my grandfather, a grizzled outdoorsman who taught me to respect the land and the animals. Hunting wasn't just a pastime. It was a tradition, a way to connect with the simplicity of life and the quiet focus it demanded. In October, as deer season approached, I began exploring the 80 acres of pristine woodland that bordered Green Valley Estates. The forest was breathtaking, towering evergreens, a clear stream winding through the undergrowth, and clearings perfect for spotting game. Curious about its status, I visited the county records office and discovered the land belonged to Frank Williams, an 83-year-old retiree living in Florida. I tracked down Frank's contact information and sent him a polite email, explaining my interest in hunting on his property and promising to treat it with respect. To my surprise, he replied the next day, his tone warm and nostalgic. "Son, I've owned that land for 50 years, he wrote. "My family used to farm the clearings. Haven't been back in almost a decade since my arthritis got bad. If you want to hunt there, you have my permission. Just be respectful and send me a picture if you get a nice buck." Elated, I prepared for the season, unaware that this decision would ignite a conflict that would shake the entire neighborhood. What I didn't know was that Evelyn and a group of HOA members had been using Frank's land for years as their personal playground. They'd carved unofficial trails, installed benches at scenic overlooks, and even set up bird feeders, treating the property as an extension of Green Valley's amenities. They called it the Green Valley Nature Trails, a selling point for new residents, without ever bothering to check who owned the land. On a crisp November morning, I set out before dawn, rifle in hand, and positioned myself in a clearing Frank had described as a prime spot. As the sun rose, my patience was rewarded. An 8-point buck stepped into view. I took a clean shot, and the deer dropped instantly. As I approached to field dress it, I heard voices. Through the trees emerged Evelyn, leading a group of 5 women in expensive athleisure wear, their water bottles glinting in the morning light as they chatted about neighborhood gossip. The moment Evelyn saw me kneeling beside the deer, her face contorted in horror. "What in God's name are you doing?" she shrieked, fumbling for her phone. "This is a protected area. Who gave you permission to murder animals here?" Before I could respond, she was snapping photos, her companions gasping in unison. "This is absolutely barbaric," she declared, and completely against Green Valley's commitment to environmental stewardship. I tried to explain that I had Frank's permission and a valid hunting license, but Evelyn waved me off. "We manage these nature trails," she insisted, "and hunting is absolutely prohibited." Her group nodded vigorously, their expressions a mix of shock and self-righteous indignation. I realized then that this wasn't just about the deer, it was about control. Evelyn wasn't just upset. She was threatened by anyone who didn't bow to her authority. The fine and the fight. 3 days later, an official-looking envelope was taped to my front door. Inside was a notice of violation from the Green Valley Estates Association, accusing me of cruel hunting activities and causing community disturbance. The fine was a staggering $5,000, payable within 30 days. My first reaction was disbelief, followed by a slow-burning anger. I knew enough about HOA regulations to understand they had no jurisdiction over private land outside their boundaries, especially when I had the owner's explicit permission. I called Sarah, who sighed heavily when I told her about the fine. "That sounds like Evelyn," she said. "She's been talking about this at the school where I teach, making you sound like some kind of serial killer. Several parents are worried there's a dangerous element in the neighborhood now." She lowered her voice. "Look, Evelyn's been leading her Green Valley wellness walks through those woods for years. She uses it as a selling point for new residents. Exclusive access to private nature trails. I don't think she's ever checked who owns the land." The next evening was the monthly HOA meeting, and I decided to attend, armed with a folder of documentation. The community center's meeting room was packed, an unusual turnout that suggested Evelyn had rallied her supporters. She sat at the head of the table, flanked by Marcus and Richard. Jessica Parker, a 40-year-old, busybody known for reporting minor violations like unapproved, mailbox colors, sat nearby, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Ah, Mr. Holloway has decided to join us," Evelyn announced as I took a seat near the back. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why you feel it's appropriate to engage in violent activities in our neighborhood nature preserve." Her framing was deliberate, designed to shame rather than discuss. I stood, keeping my voice steady. "I'd be happy to clarify. First, I was hunting legally with a valid permit on private property with the owner's written permission. Second, the land is not HOA property or a neighborhood nature preserve. It's owned by Frank Williams, who lives in Florida. I have copies of my license and his email. I placed the documents on the table. Furthermore, the HOA has no jurisdiction to issue fines for activities outside its boundaries. I've reviewed the bylaws, and there's nothing that gives you this authority." The room fell silent. Richard picked up the documents, his brow furrowing. "He seems to have a point about jurisdiction, Evelyn," he said cautiously. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "That's where you're mistaken. Mason, those trails have been part of our community resources for over a decade. We've maintained them, improved them, and our residents have enjoyed them as part of the Green Valley experience. Whether some absentee owner is technically on the deed is irrelevant after so many years of established use." Marcus nodded vigorously. "Plus, the presence of firearms so close to our homes represents a serious safety concern, especially for children. The debate grew heated. Jessica stood declaring dramatically, "I moved here because it was peaceful and safe. Now I'm afraid to let my children play in our yard, knowing there are armed men prowling the woods."